How do blind people choose the right cane? How do blind people choose the right cane? Hi, my name is John Bailey, and I am the blind guy who sees options. If you find yourself, if you're vision impaired, or you have a family member who's vision impaired, or just someone you know, it can be kind of confusing what kind of cane to get. There's several different kinds from all sorts of different manufacturers at lots of different price points. So the question is, which cane is best for you? Well, I'm going to give you some pointers today that'll give you some guidelines on which canes will work best. And you'll probably find that more than one kind will work perfectly well for you, and it all depends on the situations. So let me get started by saying there's a couple of different kinds of canes, and where they work best depends a lot on your situations. Let me start off by talking about the first kind of cane. Actually, it's one of my favorites, and it's the favorite of a lot of trainers who teach mobility skills to the blind. It's called the straight white cane, and like the name suggests, it's straight. In other words, aka it doesn't bend or fold, which is great. Here's the pro of it. It's usually made of a very light material, and it's really easy to carry. You need a little strength of the fingertips just to carry it and move it around. Very light. Secondly, it's very sensitive because it's so light. If it bumps into something, you'll know right away. If you have a heavier cane, you probably won't be able to be as sensitive with the feedback getting that from the cane. So, straight white cane. What are the cons? Well, it's fine if your cane isn't that tall. If you're not that tall and your cane isn't that tall, it's pretty easy to store, no real problem. But if you're tall like me, over 6 foot, or you could be run into situations where laying your cane on the ground or putting it up against the wall can be problematic. It's too long to conveniently put aside for any amount of time. So what you might want to consider for those is canes that fold up or become smaller. And I'm going to go into more detail about those kind of canes. But for me, my favorite, even though I'm tall, even though my cane is very tall, I really prefer the long white cane, the one that doesn't fold or bend or any of that stuff. It's just so much easier to use, and I could use it for hours and hours. I could take super long walks if I want to, and will have no problem with it because it's just so light. So why do training professionals, those who teach mobility skills to the low vision and to the blind, really like the straight white cane, the non-folding kind? It's actually a really simple reason. When people are adapting to the techniques of blindness, or just adapting to blindness in general, they could feel uncomfortable having a white cane. Unfortunately, and it's so undeserved, there is a stigma attached to carrying a cane. My philosophy is it's just a tool. It's like, are you embarrassed by wearing shoes? Are you embarrassed by, well, some of you are, embarrassed by glasses? It's just a tool. It doesn't signify anything. It just means you're out there. I look at it as a very positive thing. You're out there. You're living your life. You're mobile. So you could be reluctant, if you're a student learning mobility skills for the first time transitioning, to have this big cane around with you all the time. You'd be tempted to fold it, hide it in certain places, and probably more than likely than not to keep it hidden even when you need it. Mobility instructors recognize this and say, use the straight white cane. That way you can't hide it. You can't put it in a place that's inaccessible. You'll have to use it. That way you'll develop the skills and you'll get really good, because their goal is to make sure that the vision impaired person knows the skills solid so they could travel comfortably and safely. What people do when they get home with their canes, and that's their business. So that is the long white cane, is one of my favorites because it's very sensitive. If you run into things, it's very light, And it's also for training professionals and those learning to use the white cane. You can't hide it. It's there all the time, so you must use it. So I mentioned that there are folding canes. Now, why would anybody want to use a folding cane, if it's like heavier or stuff like that? There are certain circumstances where you would want to use a folding cane. For example, I have friends who travel extensively through airports and on airplanes. It can be awkward taking this big white stick around with you, putting it in the overhead. Sometimes it'd just be nice to stick it in your bag so you just don't have to worry about it. Well, in order to do that, you use something called a folding cane. There's two kinds. There's folding, which literally folded has elastic straps in it that allow it to separate and then fold up, and it holds together like Lincoln logs. And then you put a strap around it, holds it all together, slip it in your bag, much smaller than when it's fully extended. Another kind is called a telescoping cane, which is like it sounds. It's one segment that falls into another. I'm going to give a demo in just a second. One segment that fits into another, so it's much smaller than the original. So those are two kinds of canes, pros and cons. Pros, they're very convenient if you are in a place where having a big white stick is awkward, like we're in an airport or someplace like that. The downside, again, for folding canes is that they are heavier. They are less sensitive. And the elastic can break, and that could be problematic. So what I'm going to do is, for the telescoping canes, the problem with telescoping canes is they're very light. They're very close to straight white canes. They de-telescope, which is a new word I just invented. Feel free to use it, which means it just collapses in if you run into an object. Several times I've run into objects with the cane, better the cane than my nose, and it has collapsed on itself, which is kind of awkward. And then I have to go and pull it and lengthen it again so that I could reuse it. And sometimes, depending upon how easily the cane de-telescopes, could be awkward and really annoying. So just keep those in mind. But for putting away when you don't need it, those are two great ways to carry canes where they won't fit easily. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you a folding cane. Now this is a folding cane, and the elastic here allows it to be two pieces, and it folds over. Now they have different styles where you can fold it into more than just two segments. You could make it really small if you want to. I prefer just two segments. This is small enough for me, but still pretty light. And much more convenient. And like I said, when you travel, having something half the size makes it much more convenient. So another one, let me show you this one. All right, there we go, falling to the floor. All right, this is a telescoping cane. There's only so much. It looks like a normal cane, but you'll see these are segments. Now I'm going to show you how much smaller this is. This one's about 5'5", something 5-footer. It's going to be much smaller. Now I'm going to press down on it. You won't be able to see it. Collapse it down. Much easier to carry. Perfect for a purse, man purse, lady purse, whatever, or a shoulder bag, whatever. This is convenient. I actually have two canes when I travel. One for the straight white cane, just for my regular, and this in my bag in case something happens to the straight white cane, like it breaks. I've seen that happen before. That is really annoying and very awkward if you don't have a spare. So let me just recap what we've covered today on how do blind people choose the right cane. It really depends on the circumstance. If you are someone learning to travel, or you're someone who does long walks and really likes to travel that way, a long white cane is ideal for you because it's very light and very sensitive. You'll be able to feel all the textures of the sidewalk and everything as you slide your cane across. A lot of information comes that way. However, if you do a lot of traveling another way and you don't have convenient places to store your cane when you're not using it, like if it sticks out into an aisle or falls from the overhead because it's so tall it just doesn't fit, a folding or telescoping cane works really well. And there's so many variations on it. Like I mentioned, folding canes can fold into just 2 or many sections. Same thing with telescoping. The telescoping canes can get really, really tiny. But boy, you can't beat that for convenience. So that's how a blind person chooses a cane. It really is a very personal choice and very much depends on the lifestyle. My name's John Bailey. I'm the blind guy who sees options. Hey, if you have a chance, go to my website, my blog. I've got lots of different articles, and I'd love to hear from you. My website is johnbaileyspeaker.com. Speaking of that, I'm trying to fill up my speaking schedule. I do blog posts, I write articles, I do lots of things like that, but I also love to speak in front of groups. There's nothing like meeting people. So if you've got a group, if you're a meeting planner, you've got a boss, somebody who would enjoy a really good speech, if I must say myself, about seeing options where they're previously invisible, finding opportunities that are unseen, give me a call. Go to my website, check out what I talk about, and it's also got my contact information. Thank you. And if you like the video or have suggestions, please make a comment and like this video on YouTube.